Kwame Nkrumah alone, bringing him in direct confrontation with the Convention People's Party. And that party describes his claims as unfounded and an unfortunate gaffe. So what are the facts of the matter? And is the MPP, the New Patriotic Party, on a mission to erase Nkrumah's record and rewrite history? We're delving into that with our guests this morning. Joining the conversation, we have Frimpong Yao Anokye. He's a lawyer and he also is with the Convention People's Party. I'll be posing a question to him shortly about how he's referenced himself in respect of this conversation and in respect of the CPP. But also joining the conversation, we have Professor Bafo Agyeman-Duah. He's a former UN governance advisor. Both gentlemen join me this morning. Prof, welcome aboard.
Thank
Lawyer,
you,
good morning to you. Thank you for joining the conversation.
Thank you.
I see your outfit this morning is Nkrumah-esque. It's very Nkrumah-like. Is it intentional?
It is intentional.
In fact, you bear a bit of semblance to him as well, if I may respectfully say so.
Well, people say that a lot, yeah.
Okay, but let me start with you. You say, of course, we'll delve into the issues, but you say you are the de facto presidential candidate of the CPP. That is actually being contested. So tell me, why this title you've put on yourself? You're an aspirant, are you not?
Not putting on myself. It is the party that believes that I should become their presidential candidate. And that's why they call me so. I haven't told anybody yet, but they are making me the presidential candidate of their party. And the reality, which Ghanaians already know, is that from 96, 92, all the other parties apart from the NDC stayed out of the election. From 96 up to the year 2020, all these 8 elections we have had, CPP, to say the truth, has never come up with any serious Nkrumahist. And when I say they are not serious Nkrumahist,
not serious candidate, but serious Nkrumahist.
Very good. Because if you are a candidate of the CPP, you must believe in Nkrumahism, you must believe in the party's ideology, and you must believe in the fact that the party is a growing entity, like an embryo. And so when you lose the election, you stay and build. Tell me which CPP presidential candidate or chairman has stayed after an election. And that is the reason why their fortunes have always dwindled. And then they seeing that the past 6 years or so, me, Anokye Frimpong, always talking about Nkrumah here and outside the country, now come together to say that Anokye Frimpong, you would be our presidential candidate. And that is why they call me the de facto presidential candidate. And I know myself, I will do better than everybody. I can even win the election, because the truth is that, you can't say Green Street was like Anokye, Abu Sakara was like Anokye, Professor Hagan, a good day, Dr. Agusa was not a presidential candidate. Gian, Induo. We are talking about people who can stand on the platform, you understand, and speak Nkrumah and let the people of Ghana
You're saying
know
all
what
these people never exuded that?
They never did that, and that is the truth.
Okay, but even before, I don't want to make it a personality contest, but you just said 2 things. You said, I can win the election. You also said, it is the members of the CPP who call me that. As we sit here, you are not the de facto presidential candidate. Let me make my point and then I'll let you. You are not the de facto presidential candidate of the CPP. You've not had an election. You've not been voted for. Should you be carrying yourself as the de facto presidential candidate? Because when you are introduced as such...
if you understand the word...
We've been told that you are using it as branding, but de facto means, as a matter of fact, that is what you are.
Yes, if you understand the word de facto, you would know that it is as opposed to de jure. De jure is when the law, in fact, you go for Congress. De facto is when everybody says that is the man. So you don't need to go too far there. No, don't go too much into it. And indeed, you are not even a member of our party.
Well,
I am telling you.
Well, guess what? Some members of your party are not so happy with that.
Not some members. There could be people from other parties who are scared that for the first time, CPP is coming up with a true politician, a true Nkrumah.
Okay.
That is why they are scared. And then they will put on CPP skin and then call you and say, I'm not de facto.
Okay. Let's not belabor that point. I just wanted some clarity on that matter. Prof? So here we are. Another Founders Day melee that we have. Me, I espouse my thoughts openly. I don't know whether you caught me, but I said that you can't have Nkrumah with, especially what some of those who later would become, I don't want to use that word, in the fight against independence, now claim that he is not the founder. But let's get into what the president has said in recent times about Nkrumah not being the founder, but one of the founders. From where you sit, what is your reading of this matter?
Oh. Thanks, Ben, and good to meet my great friend here. Yes. Fortunately, I'm not competing for the presidency.
My teacher.
Thank you. You see, there are certain historical facts that we should recognize. And I want to make a distinction between the period prior to, say, the first legislative elections that we had in the country in 1951 and beyond. Historically, it's known the first political party organized in this country was the UGCC.
Right.
And we know all the founders of that party.
And even someone we don't talk about often, Pa Grant. And his role in...
Without his money, Nkrumah wouldn't have come because he paid for the ticket for Nkrumah to come. So they invited Nkrumah to be the general secretary. He came. And within 1 year, it was clear that they could not work together because his philosophy, his orientation, his vision, everything that he had were different from what he came to meet. All right. Now, if you look at that historical period alone, the fact that those who formed the UGCC had the agenda of bringing independence to the country, that was their main agenda. And they needed a dynamic young person, and they found it in Kwame Nkrumah. So they decided to bring him down from London. But Nkrumah came from London after experiences in the United States, where the emerging civil rights movement had made some impact on him. So his orientation was different. He was a leftist, if you want to put it that way. So he came to meet people who were more, in American parlance, you say they were Uncle Toms. People who, well, they wanted independence.
That's an interesting allusion, though, to Uncle Tom.
Yeah, you see, because, anyway. So, okay. So, for me, if you're talking about those who conceived of the notion of fighting for independence, we cannot belittle the role of the UGCC.
Exactly.
Okay?
We can even go way back as one of my, and of course we know this, but one of the viewers has put up there, even as far back as the Aborigines Rights Protection Society. We could go as far back as that.
Correct.
In terms of conceiving some
conceiving it.
Right.
Even though, frankly, the Aborigines Rights Society was purposely looking to reclaim their land, stop the British. So in that respect, it wasn't an independence that they were looking for.
True.
But just reclaim their land. Okay. So in terms of organized party to seek independence, it was just UGCC. So in that, I think there's a certain glory that we can give them. They conceive it. Nonetheless, the ideology was radically different from that of Nkrumah. So that even when Nkrumah was looking for independence now, they were thinking of independence
within the shortest possible time.
And from what I've read, that shortest possible time was 10 years from 1947.
which I have read too. Same thing.
Right. You see, so Professor S.K.B. Asante made that point, and I thought it was interesting. They envisioned 10 years for it. Nkrumah wanted it now, but eventually it was the 10 years that they had set that we got our independence, 47 to 57. Beyond that period, once elections came in and Nkrumah overwhelmed them, the attitude of the UGCC changed. Instead of perhaps working with him on certain areas, they decided to oppose him completely, to the extent that even towards independence, efforts by Nkrumah to get the British to agree to certain things were sabotaged or undermined, I should say, by the UGCC, including J.B. Dankwa.
But was it not also the case, just before you continue, that especially after Nkrumah broke away and he was making traction, this was long before he even became the leader of government, business, prime minister, and then president, that the members of that erstwhile UGCC, of which he was no longer a part, adopted the posture that if they were not the ones going to be at the helm, then no independence for Ghana. Is that not another reality?
That was the notion. I mean, that was the, if you read through those years and interactions, clearly it was like playing a game, losing the game, and therefore being in strict opposition. You know, it's almost similar to what you experience today in our politics. If I win and you lose, then everything that you do is wrong because I'm the opposition. It's similar, you see. So yes, that's why I said after that, they were in opposition to almost everything Nkrumah wanted to do, including even putting his effigy on the currency and saying that, no, for you to have your head here, we should rather have the Queen and all that. You know. So if you look at the post-50s politics, you will not be too happy with the politics of the erstwhile UGCC people in terms of really achieving independence for our country. But I think, to be fair to them, in terms of originating the idea, including even the name Ghana that I believe Dankwa had researched to bring to the
Some people have disputed that.
I know, it's disputed. You know, in Ghana, because our historians have not been very adept in giving us the story of our country, there are all kinds of contradictions and disputes over certain critical issues. And that's why perhaps we are here today still trying to figure out whether Ghana was founded by one person or more than one person. You see. So I think for me, no matter what you say, Nkrumah stands tall in our politics. And nobody can belittle his accomplishments. Even though personally, as I speak, there were certain domestic policies that I never liked and I still don't like. And no matter what
policies,
you say,
right?
Internal, local, domestic.
Okay.
Yeah. You see, but still, even if you discount, I mean, after discounting all those negativities, Nkrumah is still a person that deserves the fullest recognition of all of us. After all, he was a man of the century, not judged by Ghanaians, but globally judged.
Millennium.
Not the century, millennium.
Sorry.
1,000 years.
1,000 years, yes. And that in itself says it all. So
okay, so I'll put the blunt question to you. Do we have a founder or founders in the sense of what we are saying?
You see, there are two sides.
Unfortunately, I'm going to put you to the sword.
That's okay, because I've thought through this very, very...
And lawyer, I'll come to you shortly.
Yes.
I'll give you time as well. I just want to...
You see, intellectually, I would say a number of people founded the country intellectually. But when it comes to the ideological side, emotional side, you may say Nkrumah alone did it. So I think you have to view it in that way, because frankly, I cannot dismiss the role of the UGCC towards found. After all, they brought Nkrumah. Perhaps even if they had not brought him, he was going to come himself. Yet, he was brought down to help them to achieve independence. So how can you take them out?
All right. Over to you.
Well, first of all, let me acknowledge my professor, my lecturer, and today is like I'm sitting with him. But I should have sat down, you know. Let me acknowledge him. And then let me also acknowledge the president. My uncle Modibo Okran told me that they were friends, and President AKUFO ADDO recommended that he should be made the Chief Justice of Ghana. And today, as I sit here, let me acknowledge that the family recognizes what he thought of doing for us. In fact, if he was the president then, Modibo Okran would have become the Chief Justice of Ghana. Now, going into this whole thing, I will start by praising my senior and my lecturer for the very honest assessment he has made. And that is where I also stand, that a lot of people started the war before Kwame Nkrumah was brought in. But when you wanted to push him back to 1897, I mean, the professor made you to know that the aim of the Aborigines Rights Protection Society was to protest against the Lands Bill. And they never went to Britain to ask for independence. And when they became successful in that regard, the organization dwindled and eventually fizzled out, its position to be taken by the National Congress of British West Africa. Now it is true that the United Gold Coast Convention was formed by a group of people and with the slogan, self-government within the shortest possible time. That alone should tell you that they were also aimed at fighting for independence. But where I want to go is the fact that Pa Grant was a businessman, a timber merchant. All the other leading members of the party were full-time businessmen and or lawyers who did not have time to do active politics. Two.
We know this was like part-time work for them, as and when they had time.
Part-time. And to make it even worse, people should begin to know that most of the leading members were also members of the colonial parliament, the legislative assembly. Sorry, it was the legislative council, like Grant representing Second D, Dankwa representing Achimebuakwa, Awuno Williams, Obechebi, Lamte. They were already members of the colonial parliament and therefore never in the haste for the fight for independence. And so they thought that there must be somebody who would have to be the active administrator of the UGCC, do it full-time, give him a car, give him £100 a month, so that the organization would be kept relevant until the time that the white man, the colonial master, decide to leave the country. Then we would be seen as a people prepared to take over. And that was why Nkrumah was brought in after the suggestion of Akwaje. Now when he came, he had a different notion altogether, as Professor was saying. Professor would agree with me. He's an astute political scientist. He was my lecturer. Professor would agree with me that Kwame Nkrumah had studied in the US with about 50 countries coming together as one. And so he never believed in the idea of looking for independence for the colony. And at that time, the colony was Western Province, Sekendi Takoradi, Central Province, Cape Coast, Eastern Province, Accra. Transvolta Togoland was not part of it. Ashanti was being ruled by proclamations, and they're not. Yes. Yeah. So UGCC, even when you look at the bill, our city, you see that the people captured there, none of them was from Volta. Who told you that Voltarians have not all the time had great scholars to be part of this organization? Talk about Northerners, talk about Ashanti, Bono. They were not there because it was restricted to the colony. And everybody knows that J.B. Dankwa in his writings had suggested the name Akanman for Ghana. Then when Nkrumah came, he augmented the two branches of the UGCC he came to find. One in Accra, one in Second D. You know, within 4 months, he had transformed it into 500 branches. And they were angry with him. Second, 1948 riots. It was suspected that Nkrumah and Akwaje were those who pushed the ex-servicemen to do all that they did. In any case, Akwaje joined the others. So when they were writing their caution statements, they were very careful not to talk about independence. It was Nkrumah who, in his raw caution statement, a copy of which I have read, stated that he was the one, he would just take the blame for all that had happened because he wanted independence. And then the rest were put in prison in Kumasi. He was put in prison in Tamale. Then the Watson Commission said they should be released, and they were released. Thereafter, as Professor had already told you, his ideas were fundamentally different from the rest. So what will happen was that he will break away. When he broke away, and this is the beginning of the story, when Kwame Nkrumah broke away, and what makes him the founder of the nation is that, having formed the CPP, he made sure, as his organization skills had always been, the party will be a national party. But the National Liberation Movement that broke away from the CPP because of cocoa and other agitations became an Ashanti party. Then the northern people who felt that during the colonial period, the white man had designed an imaginary line between the north and south so that no northerners should be sent to school, so that they would do watchman work, so many things unprintable. Felt after independence, they would, instead of the white man, serve the black man. That one, they would decide to go away. So they formed the Northern People's Party. Then the Transvoter people...
Which later would become problematic moving forward, because we didn't want parties formed on ethnic lines.
So the
later,
same
that would
Kwame
become
Nkrumah later would move for the avoidance of discrimination, so that all of them will be put together. So you will see that Transvoter Togoland Party and the SG Anto, SD Dombo's Party, Bafwa Koto's Party, and then Gashifi Mope Muslim Association Party were all sectional or sectorial in kind, and therefore could not have won independence for the country. That was the reason why in the 1954 elections, the CPP won seats in every part of the country. But NLM was restricted to Ashanti, and then others restricted to wherever they came from. So you see how we say Nkrumah was the founder of the nation. But for Kwame Nkrumah, the UGCC having been dismantled after the 1951 election. In fact, we had 38 seats, and Kwame Nkrumah won 34 seats.
Correct.
UGCC won 3, independent 1. And after that, it fizzled out. Then the Ashanti people, there is a piece of tribalism in politics. The Ashantis have never liked the Achimebua